Welcome back. Today marks the end of the Spaza shop registration period. The Kokta Minister Velinkosi Nihlabisa had clarified that the actual due date after previous miscommunications was the 17th of this month. The registrations are aimed at curbing foodborne illnesses, which has claimed many children's lives. The city of Cape Town is extending their deadline, while KwaZulu-Natal has been conducting registration blitz in the last few weeks. Let's now get an update from the chairperson, we hope to speak to the chairperson of the Economic Development and Tourism Committee in the KwaZulu-Natal Legislature, Mafika Mdebele. We're still struggling to get a hold of him. But in the meantime, we continue the conversation with Dr Vusumuzi Sibanda, who is the chairperson of the African Diaspora Global Network. Dr. Sibanda, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. So the due date, the 17th of December, that has been clarified, and that date is today. What are you hearing from your constituencies about whether or not they are able to make the deadline that has been set? We see already that there are some tuck shop owners that are calling for an extension.
Good morning, Adrian, and good morning to the viewers. Yes, indeed, they are quite, what we are seeing and what is happening is basically that the challenges that have been mentioned, are that even the clarification that happened with the Minister of Culture, I think it was on Thursday or Friday, where he said, look, the important thing is that they must just at least, submit the application. Came in just slightly a bit late, considering that, yesterday was the holiday. But there are attempts, from, the Spaza shop owners to make sure that at least, those that could not make it even then, today they'll try as much as possible to get to those, registration places. Though, of course, there are challenges, especially with those whose asylum seekers, have been expired, where basically they're saying, should we submit? And the information should have gotten to all of them that at least they can submit, those expired asylum seekers and letters to show that they are trying to have them renewed.
Yeah. So is the problem both at a Home Affairs level when it comes to the asylum seeker documentation, and also at a municipal level where the applications are actually taking place for the registration of these businesses?
Yes, that's that's the double whammy that we have there, because the Home Affairs, perennially there's been a problem there, especially with the refugee center. And you'll remember recently we ended up having people, basically, somebody passing on because of how, it's not properly managed. People, have got these queues and they stampede, and the coming in, basically is not as straightforward. And it doesn't matter whether somebody tried to make an online booking and registration and they're given a letter to say, come to the center to have your asylum extended. But when they get there, that is not considered. They just have to go and queue outside and, wait to be assisted. And officials come in and pick them as and when they want. And sometimes they go back because they say the machines are not working. And then also comes to the municipal level as well, where ideally, there is quite a few people that are coming in there, and how they are assisted, also looks like it's very difficult. Like we have said that some of these municipalities don't seem to have the necessary manpower and even, the equipment to handle, these numbers. So these problems are in both the areas that we are dealing with now.
Yeah. Have you spoken at all to some of the foreigners who own tuck shops, who are asking South Africans to front for them? Because as the minister had said before, that too is illegal.
Well, yes. Look, it has always been one of the things that we've always said. It has always been that and this is something that needs even the South African citizens to understand, because remember that what basically happens is that some of these citizens have already built their Spaza shops, and they've built them and registered them in their names, and they only want to rent out the space, to a foreign, to a foreign person who wants to run it because they've got the required capital or so. So ideally, because the person says, look, this is my property. I've built the Spaza shop, and therefore I want to have it registered. I want to make sure that the building itself complies with the regulations, so it's within my yard, and therefore I need to do that so that, it's acceptable. So they look at the issue of the building structure, it being, compliant, and then they ultimately just, register everything so that at least they only lease out. So that education is very important, so that both parties can really understand that, to avoid, even if there is need to control, the person that they are leasing out to, but they need the person to be the one that does, the registration.
Yeah. Is it known how many tuck shops in South Africa are owned by foreign nationals? Do you have any data around that?
Well, that's we don't have that information. There's quite that's why that because of the breadth, I mean, the length and breadth of the country, obviously, and the fact that these are almost very informal. They're here today and some are not here tomorrow, they move. So it will be very difficult to really know how many we have.
Yeah, and the reason that I'm asking that is that on the one end, while the government is saying that it's trying to deal with the issue of the foodborne illnesses, what has become evident as well is that government is also trying to get more locals, more South Africans into the Spaza shop industry, and some of the words that have been used before is to reclaim some of the lost ground when it comes to the ownership of Spaza shops. But would you also agree that foreign-owned Spaza shops are now outnumbering the number of South African-owned Spaza shops? Is that the sense that you're getting?
Yes, that is true. I don't think we can talk about just being a sense. It is true that the bulk of, I mean, a good number of the Spaza shops that we have are owned by foreign individuals, particularly those that are asylum seekers. But I think that's where the problem really lies, and I think it's in the terminology and how to basically do this. Because one of the things that could have been done has always been to try and get foreign individuals that run Spaza shops to work with the locals and those that want to be involved, so that at least there is a transference of skills, because some of these things are very basic skills, like your opening times, the extension of credit, for example, these small books that they write credit on, so that I mean, people can buy and pay at the end of the month. And that those kind of services are ordinarily not offered by the majority of the local Spaza shops, and they ordinarily don't close that late, like maybe 9, 10, and open at 5 in the morning. But if you get people to work together rather than to antagonize them, as if it's a war between the two groups of people, it does not really help the situation. I think the government needs to really look at it in a manner that says, how do we get these people to work together so that there is a cordial relationship, and even when it comes to the transference of the skills.
Yeah, and then with the other part around this is, so you'd have the asylum seekers, of course, who would have the right to be operating tuck shops, but then you also have the ones who don't have the necessary documentation. But I want to ask you on the argument that has been put forward by the KwaZulu-Natal government as an example, with the 22 million rand that has been set aside to help boost the Spaza shops. They're saying that the focus there is solely going to be on South African-owned Spaza shops. According to your understanding of the legislation, does it also mean that foreigners who do have asylum seeker documents, who do have the asylum seeker status in the country, that they too do not qualify for this 22 million rand?
Yes, I mean, that is the understanding, that, it excludes, the asylum seekers, because it purports, basically to look at, the South African, locals to do that. But now, you see, Adrian, one of the biggest issues is that it's like, if you take a lot of money and you don't get the people, for example, to give them, the basic skills and education, and just give them the money, and there is no mentoring that takes place. People look at the Spaza shop business and they think that it's just as simple because it's opening a Spaza shop at the back of your yard, and then you stock and you sell. But if you don't give them basics of how to operate, these, and, how to order, how to do their money, and how to balance up things, and the operating times, and that what is their niche over the big, shops like your ShopRite and your Pick and Pay and your USAID. At the end of the day, that money is going to sink down, and we're going to be talking here 10 years down the line and say, but 20 million or 22 million was set aside for this particular purpose. So it's not just a simple business as people think it is, but it takes, some skills that might appear to be basic, but that needs to be imparted on the people. But yes, it is unfortunate that the situation, and obviously if some, asylum seekers come up and, may challenge that, like what we've seen in the Limpopo province, the government of KwaZulu-Natal might find itself, having that legislation declared to be unlawful, to the extent that it excludes, the, asylum seekers that are legally in the country.
Okay, so you see that as a possibility as well?
Yes, indeed, it is a huge possibility, yes.
Okay, let's conclude on this. One of the other issues that have been raised before with foreign-owned shops was the issue around tax, and whether or not they do pay tax. Has your organization done any work to look into what happens to the profits that are coming from these foreign-owned tuck shops? Because if we are saying that these tuck shops are being run by asylum seekers, which means that these are people that have left their home country, to come to South Africa for safety reasons or whatever other reasons that there could be, what happens to their profits?
Well, look, they live here. Obviously, because they live here, it means that in the bulk of the cases, they use that money. You know, some might actually use. You find that some of them end up having 2, 3, 4 Spaza shops because, you know, they make the profit here and they spend it within the country. So obviously, I mean, like people that live here in South Africa, they've got some of them, a good number of them already have got their families here. So they live within the country. They spend that money in South Africa. And as a result, it means that that money is again spent here in the country. And once they also have got these, you know, businesses properly registered, like this kind of drive, and, you know, a proper, you know, a management of, you know, the industry by the local municipalities, it means that it then follows that it becomes a lot simpler as well, you know, to have them assessed for tax purposes and ensure that at least, you know, their contribution is done. But you must also remember that it's not just an excuse that when it comes to tax already, you know, there are certain types of taxes that they're obviously, you know, paying. It is only probably the tax on, you know, profits that might not, which is dependent on obviously having their books done, because they also have got a problem there because they do not have the necessary expertise, you know, to have their books done, to keep these proper books that can then, you know, be given to an accountant and an auditor in order for them to do that. They may have the basis of running the business, but to that extent, again, that becomes an issue.